The sound of my mother-in-law's palm connecting with my son's face is something I will never forget. It was sharp, sudden, a crack that split the air like a branch snapping in winter. Ethan gasped, his small body lurching sideways, and before I could move, before I could even process what I had just witnessed, Margaret Monroe was screaming words that would end her family forever. "He is not real family. Get out." My 8-year-old hit the floor. The plate in his hands shattered against the hardwood, green beans scattering like shrapnel across the dining room. 15 adults sat frozen around the Thanksgiving table. No one moved. No one spoke. My husband Daniel stood by the window, mouth open but silent. His sister Victoria looked away, pretending to check her phone. His father Robert stared at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. The only sound was the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, counting the seconds of my son's humiliation. I did not scream. I did not cry. I crossed the room, knelt beside Ethan, and helped him to his feet. Then I walked back to the table, reached into my bag, and placed a single envelope in front of my mother-in-law. "My lawyer is already involved." I said those 6 words quietly, calmly, like I was commenting on the weather. Margaret's plate slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor. The room stopped breathing. For a moment, Margaret just stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Her hands, those perfectly manicured hands with diamonds glittering on every finger, trembled as she reached for it. I did not wait for her to open it. I already knew what was inside, and soon enough, so would she. I looked around the room, reading every face, filing away every reaction. Daniel had gone pale, his jaw tight, but he still had not moved from his spot by the window. 38 years of conditioning had frozen him in place. He was not agreeing with what his mother had done. He simply did not know how to disagree with her. He never had. Victoria finally looked up from her phone, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was already thinking about what this meant for her position in the family hierarchy. Robert, my father-in-law, was the only one who looked ashamed. But shame without action is just performance, and Robert had been performing for 40 years. Margaret's voice cut through the silence, trying to regain control the way she always did. "This is a family matter. You are making a scene." I almost laughed. Making a scene. My son was on the floor with a red mark blooming across his cheek, and I was the one making a scene. That was classic Margaret. Reframe the cruelty as someone else's overreaction. She turned to Daniel, her voice sharp with command. "Daniel, control your wife." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He could not even look at his son. I turned my attention to Ethan. He was standing now, but barely. His hands hung at his sides, and he was looking at me with those wide brown eyes, searching my face for answers I did not have yet. The red mark on his left cheek was already darkening. A green bean was stuck to his sweater. But he was not crying. That was what scared me most. 8 years old, and he had already learned that crying did not help, that tears did not change anything in this family. I knelt in front of him, checking his face gently. His skin was hot where the slap had landed. When I touched his cheek, he flinched. Not from pain, from expectation. He whispered something so quiet I almost missed it. "I am sorry, Mom. I did not mean to sit there." My heart cracked right down the middle. He was apologizing. He was apologizing for being hit. I stood up, lifting him with me. I grabbed my purse, his jacket, my coat. 3 years. I had spent 3 years swallowing insults, ignoring slights, smiling through holidays where my son was treated like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. The slap was not the beginning. It was the end. I had made my decision weeks ago. Tonight just confirmed it. I carried Ethan toward the front door. The family finally unfroze, their voices chasing us like startled birds. Margaret's voice rose above the rest. "You cannot just leave. We have not even had dessert." Victoria chimed in, dripping with false concern. "Jessica, do not be dramatic." One of the aunts added her piece. "Think about Daniel. Think about the family." I did not respond to any of them. I just kept walking, holding my son, feeling his small body trembling against mine. Daniel finally moved. He followed us to the foyer, his footsteps uncertain, his voice pleading. "Jessica, wait. Let us talk about this." I turned to face my husband. I really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. He was still handsome, still the man I had fallen in love with. But right now, he was also the man who had watched his mother assault our child and done nothing. "You had a chance to talk." I said it quietly, so only he could hear. "You had a chance to move. You chose neither." His face crumpled, but he did not follow us outside. He stood in the doorway, caught between his mother's house and his family walking away. That image would stay with me forever. Daniel Monroe, frozen on the threshold, unable to choose. The November air hit my face like cold water, sharp and clarifying. Ethan buried his face in my neck, his breath coming in uneven bursts against my skin. I strapped him into his car seat, my hands steady even though everything inside me was shaking. Before I closed his door, he asked in a small voice, "Are we coming back?" I paused. I thought about lying, about softening the blow. Then I decided against it. My son deserved the truth, even when it hurt. "No, baby, we are not." The drive home was silent except for the hum of the heater. Ethan sat in the back, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead like the windshield was showing him a movie only he could see. Streetlights slid across his face in bands of yellow and shadow. His cheek was swelling now, the skin tight and shiny. But he did not mention it. He did not mention anything. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Daniel, Margaret, Victoria. Numbers I did not recognize. I silenced the phone and placed it face down in the cup holder. Ethan noticed. "Is Dad calling?" "Yes." "Are you going to answer?" "Not tonight." I thought about the envelope I had left behind. 3 weeks ago, I found out about the trust fund. 3 weeks ago, I hired Emily Carter, the best estate litigation attorney in Philadelphia. 3 weeks ago, I stopped hoping Margaret would change. Tonight was supposed to be a test, one last chance for this family to prove me wrong. They failed. We pulled into our driveway. The house was dark. We were supposed to be at Margaret's until 9 o'clock. It was barely 6:30. I helped Ethan out of the car, carried him inside even though he was getting too big for it. He let me. That told me everything about how scared he was. I ran a warm bath, examined his cheek in the better light of the bathroom. The mark was darker now, purpling at the edges. You could almost see the shape of Margaret's fingers. I took photographs with my phone. Different angles, better lighting. Evidence. Ethan watched me do it. "Why are you taking pictures?" "Just in case, sweetheart." He did not ask in case of what. He understood more than any 8-year-old should. Later, I tucked him into bed. He was wearing his favorite pajamas, the ones with rockets on them. He looked so small against the pillows, so fragile. I was about to turn off the light when he spoke. "Mom, am I not real family?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I sat on the edge of his bed and took his hands in mine. "You are the realest thing in my life. You are my family. Always." He searched my face, weighing the promise the way children do when they have been let down before. Then he nodded once, slow and deliberate, like he was filing my answer away for later. I stayed until he fell asleep, watching his chest rise and fall, making a silent promise. No one would ever make him feel this way again. After Ethan's breathing steadied into the rhythm of sleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table. My phone showed 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I did not read any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder Emily Carter had sent me last week. Inside were documents that would change everything. The original trust, signed by Harold Monroe, Daniel's grandfather, 6 months before his death. The list of beneficiaries: Emma Monroe, Tyler Monroe, and Ethan James Wilson Monroe. My son's name, right there in black and white. Harold had included him. Harold had wanted him protected. Then I opened the second document, the amended trust dated 3 months after Harold's death. Ethan's name, gone. Scratched off like he had never existed. And at the bottom, the signature of the woman who had erased him. Margaret Monroe, trustee. I scrolled through the bank statements Emily had obtained. $153,000. That was Ethan's share of the trust. Gone, redirected, spent on kitchen renovations and a new Lexus and expenses that had nothing to do with any grandchild's education. Margaret had not just slapped my son tonight. She had been robbing him for over a year. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, I let myself feel one thing clearly. They thought I would stay silent forever. They thought I would keep swallowing the insults, keep smiling through the cruelty, keep teaching my son that belonging was something he had to earn from people who would never give it. They were wrong. Margaret Monroe had no idea what she had awakened when she raised her hand against my child, but she was about to find out. I sat outside Ethan's bedroom door for almost an hour after he fell asleep. I told myself I was just checking on him, making sure his breathing stayed steady, watching for signs of nightmares. But the truth was simpler. I could not make myself move. The house felt too quiet, too empty without Daniel in it. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like an accusation. Eventually, I forced myself to stand and walk to the kitchen. The coffee I made went cold in my hands while I stared at my phone. The 47 text messages from earlier had multiplied to 89. I scrolled through them, my stomach turning with each one. Margaret's message sat at the top, all capital letters. "This is ridiculous. Come back and apologize." Victoria had added her piece. "You are tearing this family apart." And Daniel, my husband, the man who had watched his mother slap our son and done nothing, had sent a series of increasingly desperate texts. "Please pick up. We need to talk. Mom is upset. Mom is upset." I read those 3 words over and over, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not once did anyone ask if Ethan was okay. Not once did anyone acknowledge the slap, the fall, the small body hitting the hardwood floor. Margaret was upset. That was what mattered to this family. My phone rang. Daniel again. I answered this time, my voice flat. His words came rushing out before I could speak. "Jess, please, just come back. We can work this out." I stared at the dark window, my reflection ghostly in the glass. "Is your mother going to apologize?" A long pause. "She says Ethan provoked her. He took Emma's seat." My blood went cold. "He is 8 years old, Daniel." He sat in a chair. I know, but if we could just talk about this, maybe smooth things over." I hung up without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say. I poured myself a glass of wine I did not drink, just held it while the memories came flooding back. 3 years ago, I had been so hopeful. A single mom who had finally found love again. Daniel was kind, patient with Ethan, everything I thought I needed. He seemed like an answer to prayers I had stopped praying. When he proposed, I thought my life was finally falling into place. I had no idea what I was walking into. The first time I met Margaret, she smiled at me with teeth that did not reach her eyes. Her first question was not about me, not about how Daniel and I met, not about our plans for the future. She looked at Ethan, who was hiding behind my legs, and asked in a voice like polished steel, "And where is his real father?" I should have known then. I should have seen the warning signs written across her face like a roadmap to disaster. But I was in love, and I wanted so badly for it to work. Daniel said she was like that with everyone at first. He promised she would warm up. She never did. The slights started small, so small I could almost convince myself I was imagining them. Family dinners where Ethan was seated at a separate table, alone, while the other children sat with the adults. Birthday cards for Emma and Tyler, but nothing for Ethan. family photographs taken conveniently when Ethan and I happened to be in the bathroom or getting something from the car. Each time I mentioned it to Daniel, he had an explanation ready. She is old-fashioned. She does not mean it that way. Just give her time. I gave her 3 years. Time ran out last night. I walked to Ethan's bedroom door and watched him sleep from the hallway. In the dim light from the nightlight, I could see the curve of his cheek, the gentle rise and fall of his small chest. I noticed things I had tried not to see before. How small he made himself in groups, pulling his shoulders in like he was trying to take up less space. How he always waited to be invited before joining anything, never assuming he was welcome. How he never asked for seconds at Margaret's table, even when I knew he was still hungry. How he had learned to read a room before entering it, scanning for threats the way a soldier scans for enemy fire. 8 years old, and already an expert at disappearing. Last Christmas played through my mind like a movie I could not stop watching. We were at Margaret's house for the gift exchange. The tree was enormous, professionally decorated, dripping with gold and crystal. Emma unwrapped her gift first. A brand new iPad, the latest model, wrapped in shiny paper with a bow as big as her head. Tyler went next. A gaming console, the one every kid had been begging for all year. Then it was Ethan's turn. He opened his gift carefully, the way he did everything in that house. Careful not to make a mess, careful not to draw too much attention. Inside was a $20 gift card to a store he had never been to, for products he had no use for. He smiled and said thank you because I had taught him manners. But in the car going home, his voice so small I could barely hear it over the engine, he asked, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I lied to him. I told him no. That Margaret just did not know him as well yet, that things would get better. I hated myself for that lie, and I hated myself even more for believing it might somehow become true. 2 months ago, I noticed the photo wall at Margaret's house for the first time, really noticed it. 47 framed photographs lined the hallway, a shrine to the Monroe family legacy. Emma's first steps, Tyler's baseball games, Daniel's college graduation, Christmases and birthdays and summer vacations, all documented in matching silver frames. I counted every single one. 47 photographs. Ethan appeared in none of them. 3 years of holidays, 3 years of gatherings, and not a single picture of my son on that wall. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he waved it off. Mom is just slow to update the frames, but the newest photograph was from last month. Emma's school picture, perfectly framed, perfectly hung. Margaret was not slow. She was deliberate. I must have dozed off at the kitchen table because when I opened my eyes, gray dawn light was seeping through the windows. My neck ached and my coffee was cold. I had never made it to bed. I checked on Ethan first. He was already awake, sitting up in bed staring at the wall like he could see something written there that no one else could read. The bruise on his cheek had turned purple overnight, ugly and dark against his pale skin. He did not look at me when I came in. I made pancakes, his favorite, and set them in front of him at the kitchen table. He ate 3 bites and pushed the rest around his plate, making shapes in the syrup. Finally, he asked the question I had been dreading. "Is Dad coming home?" My chest tightened. "I do not know, baby." Ethan nodded, like he had expected that answer. His voice was matter of fact, the way children sound when they have already accepted something adults are still fighting against. "It is okay. I know he has to take care of his mom, 8 years old, already making excuses for the adults who kept failing him." After breakfast, I asked to see his cheek in better light. He tilted his face up obediently, too used to being examined, inspected, assessed. The bruise was the size of Margaret's palm. You could almost see the individual finger marks pressed into his skin like a signature. I took more photographs, different angles, better lighting. Ethan watched me with those old eyes of his. "Why are you taking pictures? Just in case, sweetheart." He did not ask in case of what. He just nodded and touched his own cheek, gently, like he was checking to make sure it was still there. Then he asked me something that nearly broke me in half. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Always, baby. When Grandma said I am not real family, what does that mean? I knelt in front of him, took his hands in mine. It means she is wrong, Ethan. It means she does not understand what family really is. He considered this, his forehead wrinkling with thought. But Dad is her real son, and Emma is her real granddaughter. And I am just... He could not finish the sentence. He did not have the words for what he was. I pulled him into a hug so tight I was afraid I might hurt him. You are my real son. You are Daniel's real stepson. You are real, Ethan. More real than anyone in that room last night. His tears came then, finally, soaking through my shirt. The tears he had been holding back since the moment Margaret's hand connected with his face. Then why does it hurt so much? I did not have an answer, because the truth was, it hurt because he had started to believe them. Somewhere along the way, over 3 years of exclusion and slights and being treated like a guest in his own family, my son had started to believe he did not belong. Mid-morning I heard a car in the driveway. Daniel's sedan pulled in, and I watched from the window as he sat there for a long moment before getting out. He looked like he had not slept either. Dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled like he had spent the night in it. Because he had. He had stayed at his mother's house while his son cried himself to sleep. He came inside, and I felt nothing. That scared me more than anything else. I should have felt relief or anger or something. Instead, there was just emptiness. His excuses started before he even reached the kitchen. Jess, I am sorry I did not come home last night. Mom was a mess and I had to calm her down. I cut him off. Where is Ethan's apology? He blinked. What? Your mother hit our son. Where is her apology? Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Daniel ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture he always made when he was about to disappoint me. She is not going to apologize. She thinks she was justified. Justified? In slapping an 8-year-old? He could not meet my eyes. She says he was disrespectful, that he knows the seating arrangement. I laughed, and the sound surprised us both. Hollow, bitter, nothing like humor. There is no seating arrangement, Daniel. There is just your mother deciding our son is not worthy of sitting at her table. He did not argue. He knew it was true. I stood up and faced my husband. You stood there. You watched her hit him. You said nothing. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I was in shock. You were not in shock. You were obedient. The word landed like another slap. Daniel flinched. That is not fair. Neither is letting your mother abuse your child. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. Neither of us took it back. Daniel sat down heavily, put his head in his hands. You do not understand what she is like, what she has always been like. Then tell me. For the first time in our marriage, he did. He told me about growing up under Margaret's control. She decided everything. His clothes, his friends, his college, his career, even his girlfriends. He told me about his older brother Marcus, who tried to break free. Marcus married a woman Margaret did not approve of. A black woman named Keisha. Margaret gave him an ultimatum. The family or the marriage? Marcus chose his wife. Within a month, Margaret had erased him completely. Photos removed from the walls. Name never spoken. Inheritance revoked. Daniel was 15 years old when he watched his brother become a ghost. He learned the lesson Margaret intended. Obedience meant survival. I asked Daniel once if he could call Marcus. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Mom said if I did, I would be next. He looked at me with something raw and broken in his eyes. I have spent my whole life trying not to become Marcus. I have been so afraid of her that I forgot to ask if Marcus was actually wrong. I went to the window, looked out at our quiet street. I filed legal papers, Daniel, before Thanksgiving. He looked up sharply. What? I found out about the trust fund, what she did to Ethan's inheritance, what she has been doing to all of you. He went pale. How did you find out? It does not matter. What matters is, I am not stopping. I am going to court." Daniel stood up, crossed to where I was standing. "If you do this, she will destroy us. She will cut us off. Then you have a choice to make. Your mother or your family." I watched his face. The fear, the conditioning, the love for me and Ethan battling underneath. "I cannot answer that right now." I nodded slowly. "Then sleep in the guest room until you can." He opened his mouth, closed it again, and walked away. I heard the guest room door click shut. Then I noticed movement in the hallway. Ethan was standing there in his pajamas, watching. He had heard everything. Our eyes met, and he did not ask if Dad had chosen us. He already knew the answer. At least for tonight, Daniel had chosen fear. But tomorrow, I would choose war. I woke on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, my neck stiff and my mouth dry. Gray morning light filtered through the curtains, and for a moment I did not remember why I was not in my bed. Then it all came back. The slap. The silence. Daniel choosing the guest room because he could not choose me. The house was quiet. I checked the hallway. The guest room door was still closed. Daniel had not emerged. I did not know if he had slept at all, but I was not going to knock to find out. I had more important things to do this morning than coddle a grown man who could not stand up to his mother. I checked on Ethan first. He was still asleep, his face turned toward the wall, the bruise on his cheek dark against the white pillowcase. I watched his chest rise and fall for a long moment, reassuring myself that he was safe, that he was here, that no one could hurt him in this house. Then I walked to the kitchen and made coffee I desperately needed. My laptop was still open on the table from last night. I refreshed my email, and my heart jumped when I saw a new message from Emily Carter, time-stamped 6:47 in the morning. The subject line read, "Additional documents recovered. Please review immediately." Emily had been working through the night. I clicked the message open with trembling hands. Multiple PDF attachments waited for me. Bank statements, transfer records, amended trust documents, and one file that made my breath catch. original_trust_Harold_Monroe_2019.pdf. I downloaded everything, but before I read any of it, I let myself remember the man who had created this trust in the first place. The only Monroe who had ever truly loved my son. 18 months ago, before Harold got sick, there was a family barbecue at Margaret's house. The usual tension hung in the air like smoke from the grill. The adults clustered in groups, talking about money and real estate and other people's failures. The children, Emma and Tyler, ran across the manicured lawn playing some game that Ethan had not been invited to join. I found my son sitting alone on the back porch steps, his chin in his hands, watching the other kids with an expression too old for his face. I was about to go to him when someone else got there first. An old man lowered himself carefully onto the step beside Ethan, groaning a little with the effort. Harold Monroe was 81 years old, Daniel's grandfather, and until that moment I had barely exchanged more than pleasantries with him. He was always quiet at family gatherings, overshadowed by Margaret's commanding presence, content to sit in corners and observe. I watched from the kitchen window as Harold asked Ethan something. My son's face changed. The careful blankness melted away, replaced by something I rarely saw at these events: animation, interest. He was actually talking, not just giving polite one-word answers, but really talking. Harold laughed at something Ethan said, a genuine laugh that crinkled his whole face. Then Harold's voice carried through the open window, clear enough for me to hear. "You know what, son? You remind me of myself at your age?" Ethan looked up at him. "Really? Really? We are the quiet ones, the ones who watch and listen. People underestimate us." Harold paused, and his next words would stay with me forever. But that is their mistake, not ours. After the barbecue, as we were loading into the car, Ethan tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, is Grandpa Harold my grandpa too?" I did not know how to answer. In this family, the rules about who belonged to whom were written in invisible ink that only Margaret could read. But Harold answered for me. He had appeared behind us, moving quietly for such an old man, and he put a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Any child in this family is my grandchild. Blood does not make family, son. Love does." From inside the house, Margaret's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Harold, stop filling his head with nonsense." Harold winked at Ethan. "Do not listen to her. She has been wrong about most things for 60 years. It was the first time I ever saw my son laugh at a family gathering." 6 months after that barbecue, Harold was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, months to live, not years. The family gathered at Margaret's house to discuss arrangements, but I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Margaret was not asking about doctors or treatments or how to make Harold comfortable. She was asking about the will, about the trust, about who would manage things after he was gone. The man was not even dead yet, and she was already counting his money. I started bringing Ethan to visit Harold in the hospital. Margaret tried to stop us. "He needs rest," she said. "Not children running around making noise." But Harold overruled her, his voice weak but firm. "Let the boy in. He is the only one who does not treat me like I am already dead." Those visits became our weekly ritual. Ethan would climb into the chair beside Harold's bed and read to him. Adventure stories, fantasy books, whatever Ethan was into that week. Harold would lie back with his eyes closed and a smile on his face, listening to my son's voice fill the sterile room with dragons and heroes and happy endings. One afternoon, Harold asked me to stay behind after Ethan went to get a snack from the vending machine. His voice was weaker than usual, but his eyes were sharp. "I need you to do something for me. Anything," I said, and I meant it. "Protect that boy." His words hit me like a weight. "After I am gone, Margaret will try to erase him, the way she erases anyone who does not fit her picture of what this family should be. I will not let her," I promised. Harold squeezed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "I know. That is why I made sure he is protected. Legally." I did not understand what he meant then. I do now. Harold passed 14 months ago, peacefully, in his sleep, at home. I learned about it through a text message from Daniel. "Grandpa is gone." 3 words, no phone call, no warning. Ethan cried for 3 days straight. He had lost the only person in the Monroe family who had ever made him feel like he belonged. Margaret did not call to offer comfort. She was too busy planning the funeral. A funeral where Ethan was seated in the back row, so far from the family section that he might as well have been a stranger off the street. 1 week after the funeral, the family gathered at a lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I was not invited. I heard about it secondhand from Daniel when he came home that evening. "Grandpa left a trust fund for the grandkids' education," he told me. "Mom is managing it until they turn 18. My heart lifted for a moment. "Is Ethan included?" Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "I think so. Mom said she would handle the details." That was the last time anyone mentioned the trust fund to me. For 14 months, I assumed everything was being handled properly. I trusted Daniel's family. That was my mistake. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I was cleaning out a closet when I found a box of Daniel's old papers. Receipts, tax documents, the kind of things people shove in boxes and forget about. At the bottom was an envelope I had never seen before. It was from a law firm, addressed to all trust beneficiaries, dated 1 month after Harold's death. The envelope had never been opened. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter summarizing the Harold Monroe Educational Trust. The initial funding was listed at $460,000. And there, printed clearly in black ink, was the list of beneficiaries. Emma Monroe, Tyler Monroe, Ethan Monroe. My son's name was right there. Harold had included him. Officially, legally, deliberately. The letter also noted that Margaret Monroe had been appointed temporary trustee and that annual statements would be sent to all beneficiaries' guardians. I had never received a statement. Not one in 14 months. Not a single piece of paper acknowledging that my son had any stake in this trust at all. I searched for estate lawyers that afternoon. Emily Carter's name came up first. Specialist in trust litigation, 15 years of experience. I called her office and explained the situation as calmly as I could. I think my mother-in-law stole my son's inheritance. That is a serious accusation, Emily said. What evidence do you have? A letter that says my son is a beneficiary. And 14 months of silence. Send me everything you have, she said. I will start digging. I sent her the letter that same day. What she found was worse than anything I had imagined. Now, sitting at my kitchen table the morning after Thanksgiving, I opened Emily's new attachments. The first document was the original trust, Harold's signature at the bottom, Ethan's name clearly listed among the beneficiaries, equal shares, 1/3 each. At the time of Harold's death, the trust was worth $460,000. Ethan's share came to approximately $153,000. The second document made my blood run cold. It was an amended trust, dated 3 months after Harold's death. Ethan's name had been removed from the beneficiary list. His share had been redistributed to Emma and Tyler. The reason given was a single line that felt like a slap to the face. Beneficiary not of direct bloodline. Harold's original trust had no bloodline requirement. Margaret had added that language herself. And at the bottom of the amendment, 2 signatures, Margaret Monroe as trustee, and Victoria Monroe as witness. Victoria knew. She had known all along. The third attachment was a series of bank statements for the trust account. I scrolled through 14 months of transactions, my fury building with every line. $42,000 withdrawn for Emma's private school tuition, but the actual tuition was only $19,000. The extra $23,000 had gone to Margaret's personal checking account, $35,000 for property maintenance. I pulled up a contractor's invoice Emily had found. Margaret's kitchen renovation, paid directly from the trust. $28,000 for a vehicle purchase. A Lexus SUV, registered in Margaret's name. $18,000 for an emergency family fund with no documentation whatsoever. Various smaller withdrawals totaling another $12,000. Dinners, travel, clothing, all logged as beneficiary enrichment activities. I did the math 3 times, hoping I had made an error. The original trust held $460,000. The current balance was $12,418. Margaret had spent $447,000 of her grandchildren's inheritance on herself, and my son, the boy she claimed was not real family, had received nothing. Emily's note at the bottom of the email confirmed what I already knew. This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty. She amended the trust without proper legal authority. She made withdrawals for personal use. She deliberately excluded a named beneficiary. This is not just unethical, Jessica. It is fraud. I stared at that word. Fraud. Margaret had not just excluded Ethan from her family, she had stolen his future. I was so absorbed in the documents that I did not hear footsteps behind me. Daniel's voice made me jump. "What are you reading?" I turned. He stood in the kitchen doorway, unshaven, exhausted, still in yesterday's wrinkled clothes. His eyes went to the laptop screen, to the legal documents displayed there. He crossed the room and read over my shoulder, his face going white. "Where did you get these?" His voice was barely a whisper. "From a lawyer. Harold's original lawyer, the one your mother apparently forgot to mention." He scrolled through the bank statements, the amended trust, the evidence of theft laid out in black and white. I did not know it was this bad. I looked at him. "Did you know it all?" He could not meet my eyes. That was answer enough. I closed the laptop. "Your mother stole $150,000 from our son. Your sister witnessed the documents. Your whole family stayed silent." I stood and faced him. "And you never once asked to see the paperwork." Daniel's voice cracked. "Jess, I did not think she would actually—" I did not let him finish. "I do not want an explanation. I want to know one thing." I waited until he met my eyes. "Are you going to help me get it back, or are you going to stand in my way?" The kitchen clock ticked in the silence. Daniel did not answer. But tomorrow I would not need him to. I had the evidence now. And Margaret Monroe had no idea what was coming for her. I woke early the morning after confronting Daniel, having barely slept at all. My mind had been racing through documents and numbers and legal strategies until sometime around 4 in the morning, when exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I opened my eyes, gray light was seeping through the curtains, and Daniel was already gone from the guest room. A note sat on the kitchen counter, his handwriting rushed and uneven. "I need time to think. Do not do anything yet, please." I read it twice, then set it aside. I was done waiting for Daniel to catch up. I was done waiting for anyone. Ethan's bruise was fading now, the purple softening to yellow-green at the edges. He sat at the breakfast table eating cereal while I explained that I had a meeting today, that a friend would pick him up from school. He looked up at me with those two old eyes. "Is it about what happened?" I paused, my hand on his shoulder. "Yes. I am going to make sure it does not happen again." He nodded slowly, the way he did when he was processing something important. Good. Just that one word, but it carried the weight of everything he had been through. I dropped him at school and watched him walk inside, his backpack bouncing against his small frame. He did not look back. Another small independence born from necessity. The drive to Philadelphia took 45 minutes. Emily Carter's office was in a glass tower downtown, not flashy but solid, the kind of building where serious work got done. I drove in silence, no radio, no podcasts, just my thoughts, and the folder of documents sitting on the passenger seat like a weapon. I thought about what Harold had said to me in the hospital. Protect that boy. Today, I was going to start keeping that promise. I signed in at the reception desk, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from anticipation. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt longer than the entire drive from Harrisburg. When the doors opened, Emily Carter was waiting for me outside the conference room. She was in her mid-40s with silver streaks in her dark hair and reading glasses pushed up on her head. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. "Mrs. Monroe. Thank you for coming in person. I needed to understand exactly what we are dealing with." She nodded and gestured toward the conference room. "Then let us deal with it." The conference room table was covered in documents organized into neat stacks. Emily had printed everything, color-coded tabs marking different sections, important passages highlighted in yellow and pink. A projector screen on the wall showed a timeline of events. I realized she had been preparing for this meeting like it was already a trial. "Before we begin," Emily said, settling into her chair across from me, "I need to ask you something." I braced myself. "How far are you willing to go?" I did not hesitate. "As far as it takes." Emily smiled, not warm exactly, but satisfied. "Good, because what I am about to show you will make you want to go further." She clicked to the first slide. The Harold Monroe Educational Trust, established March 2019. Purpose: education funding for grandchildren. Initial funding, $460,000. She pointed to the list of beneficiaries: Emma Victoria Monroe, Tyler James Monroe, and Ethan James Wilson Monroe. I noticed the name Emily had highlighted. Harold used Wilson Monroe. He gave Ethan both names. "Your son was not an afterthought," Emily said. "Harold specifically added him 6 months before his death, with a formal amendment. He planned for this." My throat tightened. Even dying, Harold had been fighting for my son. Emily highlighted a section on the next slide. "This is important. The trustee provisions." Margaret was appointed as primary trustee, but only temporarily. A successor trustee was supposed to be appointed by the beneficiary's guardians within 12 months. She was never meant to be permanent. I stared at the screen. "But she has been managing it for 14 months. Emily nodded. "Because she never notified anyone that a successor needed to be appointed. She never sent the required annual statements. She never disclosed the trust's existence to you at all. Is that illegal? It is a breach of her fiduciary duty. And it is just the beginning. The next slide showed the amended trust document, dated July 2023, 3 months after Harold's death. Emily walked me through the changes. Ethan's name removed from the beneficiary list. His 1/3 share redistributed to Emma and Tyler. Reason given, beneficiary not of direct bloodline. Harold's original trust had no bloodline requirement, Emily said. Margaret added that language herself. I stared at the document, at my son's name crossed out like he had never existed. She just erased him. And your sister-in-law witnessed it. Emily pointed to the signature at the bottom of the page. Victoria Monroe, her handwriting neat and careful. Something cold settled in my chest. Victoria had known. She had participated. She had signed her name to my son's erasure and never said a word. Emily pulled up a spreadsheet, 14 months of bank activity highlighted and annotated. Let me walk you through where the money went. I leaned forward, forced myself to look. May 2023. $22,000 withdrawn for administrative fees. No receipts, no documentation. July 2023. $42,000 for Emma's private school tuition. Emily's voice was clinical. Precise. The actual tuition is $19,000. The extra $23,000 went directly to Margaret's personal account. September 2023, $35,000 for property maintenance. She remodeled her kitchen. I have the contractor's invoice. It was paid from the trust. November 2023, $28,000 for a vehicle purchase. A down payment on a Lexus SUV registered in Margaret's name. January 2024, $18,000 for an emergency family fund. No documentation whatsoever. It simply vanished. Throughout 2024, various smaller withdrawals totaling $12,000. Dinners, travel, clothing, all logged as beneficiary enrichment activities. Emily showed me the final number, and I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Original trust, $460,000. Current balance, $12,418. Missing $447,582. Ethan's original share, $153,333. She did not just steal from your son, Emily said. She stole from all 3 grandchildren, but your son got nothing while she was spending everything. My voice came out steadier than I expected. What can we do? Emily outlined the path forward, ticking off options on her fingers. First, we file a petition for court review of trust administration. Second, we request immediate removal of Margaret as trustee. Third, we demand a full accounting of all expenditures. Fourth, we seek restitution plus interest plus legal fees. Fifth, we potentially refer the case to the district attorney for criminal fraud charges. I looked up sharply. Criminal? Emily's expression was serious. This is serious enough for criminal prosecution. But that is your choice. I need your guidance on how aggressive you want to be. What would you recommend? Start civil. The evidence is overwhelming. She will have to respond under oath. And people who lie to judges tend to dig their own graves. I asked about the envelope I had left at Thanksgiving, the one that had made Margaret drop her plate. Emily almost smiled. A shot across the bow. She explained what was inside. A formal notice that I was aware of the trust's existence. A request for immediate production of all trust documents. A notice of intent to seek legal remedy if documents were not provided within 10 days. It was not a lawsuit, Emily said. It was a warning. But she does not know that. Right now, Margaret is panicking. She is calling lawyers. She is trying to figure out how much you know. And how much do I know? Emily leaned back in her chair. Everything. She explained the timeline. Margaret had 10 days to respond to the document request. If she complied, we would have confirmation of everything we already knew. If she refused, we could go directly to court with evidence of obstruction. Either way, she loses, Emily said. What if she tries to hide more evidence? She can try, but I have already subpoenaed the bank records directly. She cannot alter those. Something shifted inside me. I was no longer the victim waiting to be rescued. I was a strategist planning a campaign. This was not just about getting Ethan's money back. It was about making sure Margaret could never do this to anyone again. Emily slid a document across the table. A retainer agreement. Official representation. I read it carefully, every word, then signed my name at the bottom. Emily gathered the papers. Welcome to the fight, Mrs. Monroe. I looked up at her. Call me Jessica, and thank you for believing me. Emily's expression did not change. I do not believe clients, I believe evidence, and yours is airtight. I stepped out of Emily's building into the gray November afternoon, my head spinning with numbers and strategies and the weight of what I had just set in motion. My phone buzzed. Daniel. I hesitated, then answered. Where are you? His voice was strained. Philadelphia, meeting with my lawyer. Silence on the line, heavy and sharp. Daniel spoke again. I am at my mother's house. I stopped walking. You went back there. I needed to talk to her, to understand. And? Did she explain why she stole from our son? Another long pause. She says you are overreacting. That the trust was always meant for blood relatives, that Grandpa was confused at the end. I laughed, and the sound surprised me. Bitter, hollow. Harold was sharper at 81 than your mother is at 67, and I have documents that prove it. Daniel's voice dropped, pleading. She is scared, Jess, really scared. I have never seen her like this. Good. She should be scared. Maybe we can work this out privately, without courts, without lawyers. My grip tightened on the phone. Your mother hit our son in front of 15 people. She stole his inheritance. She erased his name from legal documents. And you want to handle this privately? I just do not want to destroy the family. The family destroyed itself, Daniel. I am just documenting the evidence. I took a breath, steadied my voice. Come home when you are ready, but I need you to understand something. What? I am filing the petition tomorrow, with or without you. Jess, please. I did not let him finish. I am done waiting for your family to do the right thing. Now, I am going to make them. I hung up before he could respond. The drive home felt different than the drive there. I was not nervous anymore. I was not second-guessing myself. The numbers played through my mind like a drumbeat. 460,000. 153,000. 12,000. I thought about Margaret's kitchen renovation, her new Lexus, all built on money meant for children's futures. Built on erasing a boy who had done nothing wrong except exist. I picked up Ethan from my friend's house. He was quiet in the car, sensing something different about me. Mom? Did something happen? Something is going to happen. Something good. He did not ask more. He trusted me. That trust was everything. That night after Ethan fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone glowing in the darkness. 3 missed calls from Margaret. I did not listen to the voicemails. 2 texts from Victoria. You are making a huge mistake. Call me before you do something you cannot take back. I screenshotted both messages. Everything was evidence now. I opened my laptop and began drafting my own timeline of events. For the petition, for the court, for the record. Margaret Monroe had built her kingdom on silence and fear. She had spent decades controlling everyone around her, erasing anyone who did not fit her vision of what family should be. Tomorrow, the silence would end, and Margaret would learn what happens when a mother stops being polite and starts fighting for her child. 1 week had passed since Thanksgiving. The petition was filed, sitting in the court system like a bomb waiting to detonate. Daniel had been sleeping in the guest room every night, and we moved around each other like polite strangers, speaking only about Ethan. The bruise on my son's face had faded to a faint yellow shadow, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But the bruise on the Monroe family was just beginning to show. Saturday morning, Daniel approached me in the kitchen while I was making coffee. He looked like he had not slept properly in days, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched with the weight of something he did not want to say. "My mother wants to have a family meeting. Tomorrow, at her house." I did not look up from my coffee. "No." Daniel moved closer, desperation in his voice. "Please, she says she wants to talk, to work things out." I finally met his eyes. She has had 3 years to work things out. She chose to hit my son instead. Daniel sat down across from me, his hands clasped together like he was praying. "She is scared, Jess. The legal papers have shaken her. She has never dealt with anything like this before." "Good." I wanted the word to sting, and from the look on his face it did. He tried a different approach. "If you do not come, she will say you refuse to even try, that you are the one being unreasonable. She will twist the narrative, make you the villain." I considered this. The narrative mattered. In families like this, the story people believed was often more powerful than the truth. "Fine. I will come. But not to reconcile." Daniel looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Then why?" I set down my coffee cup. "To let her know exactly what she is up against." Saturday night, I sat at the dining table with documents spread around me like a battle plan. I had memorized the numbers, the dates, the withdrawals. Emily Carter's advice echoed in my mind. Do not reveal everything. Just enough to let them know you are serious. I selected 3 documents to bring. The original trust with Ethan's name clearly listed, the amended trust with his name removed, and 1 bank statement showing the kitchen renovation payment, enough to shake them, not enough to show my full hand. Ethan found me at the table, his pajamas too short at the ankles. He was growing so fast. "Are you working, Mom?" "Sort of. I am getting ready for a meeting tomorrow." He climbed into the chair beside me and looked at the papers without really reading them. "Is it about Grandma Margaret?" I paused, then decided he deserved honesty. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, his small fingers tracing the edge of a document. "Are you going to make her say sorry?" I reached over and smoothed his hair. "I am going to make sure she cannot hurt you again." He nodded, satisfied with that answer. "Can I stay with Mrs. Patterson tomorrow?" "I do not want to go there." "Of course, baby. You never have to go there again." Later that night, I noticed Daniel standing in the hallway, watching from the shadows. He had heard the conversation. His face was unreadable. Shame, maybe, or guilt, or the particular kind of pain that comes from watching your child fear your family. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, then closed it again. He turned and walked back to the guest room without a word. I wondered if he would ever find his voice, or if Margaret had silenced him so long ago that he had forgotten he had one. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and cold, the sky threatening rain. Daniel drove while I sat in the passenger seat, the folder of documents in my lap like a loaded weapon. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "Promise me you will at least listen to what she has to say." "I will listen. I just will not agree." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "She is still my mother, and Ethan is still my son. Guess which one I am going to protect." Margaret's house appeared at the end of a tree-lined driveway, colonial style with white columns and perfectly maintained landscaping, the picture of old money respectability. I noticed the new kitchen windows gleaming in the afternoon light. $35,000 of stolen inheritance, right there on display. Cars were already parked in the circular driveway. Victoria's sedan, Robert's truck, 2 others I did not recognize. The tribunal had assembled. Victoria met us at the door, her smile tight and practiced. "Jessica, thank you for coming." I did not return the smile. "Victoria." Her eyes flicked to the folder in my hands, and something crossed her face. Fear, maybe, or curiosity. "Mother is in the living room. Everyone is waiting." I walked past her without another word. I could feel her gaze on my back like a target. The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. Margaret sat in the high-backed chair by the fireplace, the throne position, commanding the room from the best seat. Robert sat beside her, somehow smaller than I remembered, diminished. Victoria took her place on the love seat. 2 aunts and an uncle occupied the couch, the witnesses, the jury. Daniel hovered near the doorway, belonging to neither side. And facing them all was a single empty chair, clearly meant for me. I did not sit. Margaret rose from her throne, hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver a sermon. Her voice was honeyed, controlled, the voice of a woman used to getting her way. Jessica, thank you for agreeing to talk like civilized people. I know Thanksgiving was difficult, emotions ran high, things were said that perhaps should not have been said. I noticed what she did not say. She did not say she slapped my son. She did not say Ethan hit the floor. She said things were said, already rewriting history. Margaret continued, gesturing at the assembled family. Everyone here loves you and Daniel. We want what is best for this family. We are willing to forgive and move forward. If you will just drop this legal unpleasantness. I let the silence stretch out, watching her expression shift. Then I spoke. Forgive what, exactly? Margaret blinked. I am sorry? You said you are willing to forgive. I am asking what you are forgiving me for. Her composure flickered. Well, for making this so difficult, for bringing lawyers into a family matter. So you are forgiving me for responding to assault and theft with legal action. The word theft landed like a grenade in the middle of the room. I watched the relatives on the couch exchange glances. Margaret's face tightened. That is a very strong word. It is the accurate word. Victoria stood up, playing peacemaker. Jessica, I understand you are upset, but surely we can handle this within the family. I turned to her and she flinched. Can we? The way you handled witnessing the trust amendment? Victoria's face drained of color. I do not know what you are talking about. I opened my folder and pulled out the amended trust document. Your signature, right there, witnessing the removal of my son's name. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Margaret, then back at me, then said nothing at all. The silence in the room was deafening. I stepped forward, still holding the folder. Let me tell you what I know. Then you can decide if this is something we can work out. I pulled out papers one by one as I spoke. Harold Monroe created a trust fund for his grandchildren in March 2019. Margaret's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The original beneficiaries were Emma, Tyler, and Ethan. Equal shares. I looked at Victoria. 3 months after Harold died, you amended the trust. You removed Ethan's name. You cited bloodline, a requirement that Harold never included. Your sister-in-law witnessed it. Then I turned back to Margaret. And then you started spending. I read from the bank statement, my voice steady. $42,000 for Emma's tuition, though the actual cost was $19,000. $35,000 for property maintenance, which paid for your kitchen renovation. $28,000 for a vehicle purchase, your Lexus. $18,000 for an emergency fund, which has no documentation whatsoever. I paused, letting the numbers sink in. $460,000 reduced to $12,000. 97% of the trust gone. The aunts exchanged horrified glances. They had not known. Robert looked up for the first time, something like horror on his face. Victoria was frozen like a statue. Daniel had gone pale by the doorway. Only Margaret remained composed, but her hands were shaking. Those are family funds, used for family purposes. I looked her dead in the eye. Ethan is family. Was his purpose served? Margaret's mask slipped. He was never meant to. She stopped herself, but it was too late. The sentence hung in the air, incomplete and damning. I stepped closer. Finish that sentence. He was never meant to what? Margaret's composure cracked completely. He is not Harold's blood. He is not a Monroe. Harold disagreed. That is why he put Ethan's name in the trust. He was sentimental. He did not understand the importance of maintaining proper boundaries. He understood perfectly. He understood that you would try to erase anyone who did not fit your definition of family. I tucked the papers back into my folder. He just did not live long enough to stop you. But I will. Margaret's voice changed, dropping to something almost intimate. Jessica, let us be practical. Legal battles are expensive, exhausting, they drag on for years. She moved closer, reaching out as if to touch my arm. I stepped back. What do you actually want? Money? I can write you a check today, for Ethan's education. A reasonable amount. I almost laughed. A reasonable amount? 20,000? 30? Enough for a good start. His share was 153,000. Margaret's eye twitched. That is not realistic. It was realistic when Harold was alive. It became unrealistic when you spent it on yourself. Margaret's voice hardened. I managed that trust for the good of this family. You stole from children, including your own grandchildren. Emma and Tyler's shares are nearly gone, too. Victoria gasped. She had not known the full extent. She turned to Margaret. Mom, you said the trust was fine. You said there was plenty for Emma's college. Margaret shot her a look. Be quiet. Victoria's voice rose. With what? You just said there is only 12,000 left. For the first time in the conversation, Robert cleared his throat. Everyone turned to look at him. His voice was quiet, rusty from years of disuse. Margaret, is this true? All of it? Margaret turned on him. Robert, this is not the time. Is it true? She did not answer. Robert closed his eyes and something in him seemed to break. I turned toward the door. Margaret called after me. Where do you think you are going? We are not finished. I paused and looked back at her. Yes, we are. I came to listen. I listened. Now I am going to let the court decide. You will destroy this family. You destroyed it years ago. You just did not realize anyone would notice. I walked toward the door, then stopped beside Daniel. Come home when you are ready to be a father. Then, louder to the room, I will see you all in court. I walked out the front door into cold November air. Behind me, voices rose. Victoria demanding answers, Margaret deflecting. Robert's silence louder than all of them. I did not have my car. Daniel had driven. I pulled out my phone and called a rideshare. I would wait in the cold. It was better than one more minute in that house. As I stood by the curb, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it and my heart stopped. Jessica, this is Robert. I need to talk to you, alone. There is something about Harold's trust you do not know. I stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure I understood. Behind me, Margaret's voice rose to a shriek inside the house. But for the first time, I was not listening to Margaret. I was wondering what the silent man finally had to say. I stood at the curb outside Margaret's house, cold November wind cutting through my coat. Inside, I could hear muffled shouting, the family imploding without me there to witness it. My rideshare was 7 minutes away according to the app. I read Robert's text again. There is something about Harold's trust you do not know. What could I possibly not know? I had seen the documents, the numbers, the signatures. I had watched Margaret's face when I laid out the evidence. What else was there? The front door opened and Daniel stepped out. He looked wrecked, 10 years older than his 38 years. He walked toward me slowly, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. I will drive you home. I called a ride. Cancel it, please. I studied his face. Something had shifted in him, something I had not seen before. I canceled the rideshare. We drove in complete silence for the first 10 minutes. I watched the trees blur past the window, bare branches reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Finally he spoke. You were right. About all of it. I waited for more. I have spent my whole life pretending she was not who she is. And tonight, watching her try to buy you off, watching her blame everyone except herself, I could not pretend anymore. I did not respond. I needed more than words. But it was a start. We pulled into our driveway and sat in the parked car, engine off, neither of us moving to go inside. The house was dark. Ethan was staying at Mrs. Patterson's tonight. I had planned it that way, knowing today would be hard. The silence between us was heavy but different now. Not hostile, just exhausted. Daniel's voice cracked when he finally spoke. After you left, Victoria started screaming at Mom, asking where Emma's college money went. What did Margaret say? He laughed bitterly. She told Victoria to calm down, that she was being hysterical. The same thing she says to everyone who questions her. He turned to look at me, and I just stood there. Again. Like I always do. Why? He was quiet for a long moment, because I have been standing there my whole life, and I do not know how to do anything else. I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned to face him fully. I need to know something, and I need the truth. He nodded. Did you know? About the trust, about Ethan being removed. Did you know before I told you? His face crumpled. I did not know the details, but I knew something was wrong. How? Because Mom stopped talking about it. After Grandpa died, she mentioned the trust constantly, managing it, protecting it, making sure it was handled properly. Then suddenly, nothing. Complete silence. And I did not ask because... He trailed off. Because you did not want to know. He nodded, shame written across every line of his face. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. I saw the boy who had learned to survive by staying silent. I saw the man who had chosen comfort over courage for far too long. I saw someone who might finally be ready to change. Sorry is not enough, Daniel, but it is a start. I opened the car door. Come inside. We need to talk. Really talk. We sat at the kitchen table. Coffee neither of us would drink growing cold in our cups. I asked the question that had been building inside me since the family meeting. Tell me about Marcus. Daniel flinched at his brother's name. What do you want to know? Everything. Because I think whatever happened to him is why you cannot stand up to her. Daniel stared at his coffee cup for a long moment. Then he began. I was 10 when I understood the rules. Marcus was the firstborn, the heir, the one who was supposed to carry the Monroe name into the next generation. I was the spare. Loved, sure, but never essential. Mom's entire world revolved around Marcus. His achievements, his future, his perfection, and Marcus played his part perfectly. Until he didn't. He looked up at me. Marcus was 24 when he met Keisha. She was smart, beautiful, kind, everything you could want in a partner. And she was black. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I could already see where this was going. Mom's reaction was immediate and absolute. She told Marcus that if he married Keisha, he was no longer her son, that he would be cut off from everything. The family, the money, the name. Daniel's voice dropped. Marcus thought she was bluffing. She was not. Marcus married Keisha anyway. Within a month, Margaret had removed him from the family trust entirely. She took down every photograph of him in the house. She forbade anyone from speaking his name. She changed the locks so he could not come by to visit. Daniel's hands were shaking now. I was 15 years old. I watched my brother become a ghost. He was there one day and then he was just gone. Like he had never existed at all. I asked Mom once if I could call him,